Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone today to the Policy and Legislative Meeting on Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. We do have a quorum present this morning. We do welcome everyone in attendance, and thank you for being here and for your interest in the State Board of Education. If there are any news media present, please announce your name and company. I would like to recognize Mr. Jay Ragley as a visitor this morning to our committee meeting. And he is with, oh my God, I'm going to say this right, Advocados USA. Perfect. We are so glad you're here today. Thank you for being here. Do we have any other visitors to recognize this morning? Okay. Committee members, you have before you the minutes from our May 9th, 2023 committee meeting. Are there any revisions to those minutes? Hearing none, do we have any objections to fully approving the minutes today? Hearing none, those are unanimously approved. Next, I ask for approval of the agenda for today's committee meeting for June 13th. Do you have any objections to approving the agenda for today's meeting as it was presented to you? Hearing none, that agenda is approved with unanimous consent. We do not have anyone signed up for public comment today. We do have 3 items for approval on today's committee agenda. We are going to begin. We have Mr. Philip Cease here from the Office of Governmental Affairs, and he is going to present the first reading of proposed amendments to Regulation 4380, which is the operation of public student transportation services. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. The proposal in front of you to Regulation 43-80 does a couple things. One, it updates the definition of disabled students to students with a disability. And then at the request of the Education and Public Works Committee in the House, it clarifies the parameters in which an aid is required on a bus, the priority in which aids assigned to those buses, the circumstances in which an aid for a student with an IEP or 504 plan may serve as an aid for the bus. During the drafting notice public comment period that closed on May 28th, we received comments that were kind of grouped into the 3 following categories: asking us to protect children, mandate aids on buses with students in a child safety restraint system, and ensure that students with an IEP and 504 plans, those plans are followed when allocating aids to buses. This regulation was drafted in consultation with Department Legal Counsel and the Transportation Office.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cease? Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the first reading of proposed amendments to Regulation 4380 presented today?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. O'Shields. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I don't know where my mind went.
I was looking around at everyone. We have a motion from Dr. O'Shields. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We have a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Cease. We
Thank you all.
appreciate it. We also have with us today Stephanie DeStacio, Director of the Office of Personalized Learning, to present 2 requests for flexibility pursuant to the competency-based education proviso adopted by the General Assembly in the 22-23 General Appropriations Bill. We will first hear about Greenwood School District 52, and then we'll go straight into Pickens County if you'd like to do them back to back that way.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for letting me come and speak to you today. As a reminder, the proviso 1.116, competency-based education, which was adopted by the General Assembly, allows districts seeking to implement competency-based education to submit a waiver application to the State Board of Education. And it also noted in the proviso that competency-based education refers to a comprehensive learning approach for a student to master competencies and related standards along a personalized, self-paced, and flexible pathway. And so that is just a quick reminder about that proviso. I know you've seen those prior. We've had prior ones come before. For Greenwood 52, I wanted to just draw your attention to their waiver application, and they are requesting some exemptions under 2 categories. And the categories, when you look at the exemptions, they can be lumped into 2 categories. One really around seat time exemption, and that, again, they've noted all of those regulations there, working close with folks here at the Department of Education. And the second one is around teaching staff certification. And so I'm going to talk about the first one around the seat time piece. Generally speaking, Greenwood's rationale and their impetus for asking for this is they have a virtual education program, as many districts in our state do, that came about as a result of COVID. And what they would like to do is they are finding that students often are able to advance at different paces through those programs. And so what they would like the ability to do is apply that to that virtual program and then be able to couple that with some additional types of experiences within the community or giving kids access to other things within the school as well. So rather than having that be about time, they want to focus on the mastery piece and ask for that exemption on seat time. So that is the bulk of that request around their seat time exemption. And you'll also notice that they mention their virtual platforms. They also work with Virtual SC as well. And so that's where that piece is coming from. They do mention in there that they would like to move towards having and building some more authentic learning experiences with community partners. And I will tell you, that is something they are still in the process of working all of the final details out. They do have a committee, both within the school, with community business partners, with lots of others. They give you an example of that, very similar to the fact that they've been working on a banking course, and they have a community partner for that. They have a stakeholder group that will help them to think about moving in this direction and what those types of experiences for students in their community could be based on local resources and local context. And so that is why that piece was included. That is not something that they have fully fleshed out, but a direction that they want to possibly be able to head. The second set of items that they are asking for exemption around is around teaching certificates. And what they are asking, similar to what we have had some other districts ask for, would be in a situation where they are unable to find teachers or to fill a role, if they have a qualified person, that they would be able to move forward with that employment, but not to exceed 25% of their teaching staff, very similar to what we have for charter schools in the state of South Carolina. So that is their request in that area. Especially, they did note that sometimes is especially happening when they are moving towards folks, for example, in career and technical education who are transitioning into education and may not yet have their certification finalized, but they're moving in that direction and working towards that certification. And so those folks would count in that percentage until they achieve their certification. So that is the request from Greenwood 52. And I'll pause there and take questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. DeStacio?
I have a question, Madam Chairman. How does the school district plan to assess students to decide whether they learn better by virtual rather than in classroom contact?
Yes.
And how do you assess for mastery over understanding and process?
Right. So a couple of things that they will be doing. One thing to note, they currently have a virtual program, and so this is a smaller number of students. It's about 26 students, and what they are talking about doing is exactly that, tracking that, looking at the outcomes. For example, they will be able to look at things, but based on students' interim types of assessments. So we use things, for example, the NWEA benchmark types of assessments, looking at end of course assessments as well. And again, looking, in their evaluation measures that they mentioned, they do look at student achievement as it relates to the accountability system as well. So they'll be looking at those really hardcore measures rather than, in anything else.
So this is not necessarily any requirement that they have a certain amount of classroom time, and there's no real credit given to the fact that brighter students can train the less bright students.
So what they are using is, there are a number of platforms. Virtual SC that we have here through the department is one example of that, where the courses are set up, they've been vetted, they have assessments, and students would be able to move through those at their own pace. And so essentially, they can't unlock the next unit, for example, until they have mastered the previous unit at a certain percentage. And so once they do that, then they can unlock and move on to the next unit. And for some students, that may mean that they actually take a little bit more time, or they may go through some units a little faster and some units take them a little bit longer. But you're right, you may have some students who do go through that at a fairly quick pace.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, since it does take a little longer explaining it, so we don't get them mixed up, we'll go on and maybe look for approval. Is there a motion for approval of this request that was presented today for Greenwood School District 52?
Although they did take one of our football coaches, I will approve.
We have a motion from Dr. O'Shields. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We have a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And then we'll move on to Pickens then.
Perfect, thank you. And Pickens is asking for exemptions around a couple of things as well. So the first one we are going to talk through also is seat time. Theirs is a little bit of a different ask, however, so I'm going to give you some examples of their seat time exemption and the rationale for that with seat time for them. They do want, in some cases, students who might be doing an initial credit course, like through Virtual SC, for example, to be able to, if they mastered that course with an 80 or above, to be able to move forward, even if that may not take them the entire 120 hours. But they also included in their application some additional examples. And so one of the things that they talked about, sorry, let me get to the right piece, mastery of content here. This will overlap with another one you will hear about in just a minute. But in Pickens, for example, they have students with limited or interrupted formal education, international students, for example, students who might be homeless or who may be coming with little or no documentation of prior educational experiences, such as they do have a refugee population currently in Pickens. And so students who find themselves in that situation where they may not have a complete educational record would need to be able to do one of two things. One, get some flexibility from seat time, enroll in some of these courses where they can, for example, possibly advance pretty quickly because they would have had a background in that already. So you can imagine how a student might be able to do that, for example, in a summer time. But also, this may help students who want to have credit, and we'll get to this exemption, it's another one they're asking for, credits awarded that live on their transcript with the letter P, but do not impact their GPA. So they would not get a grade for that. So they're asking for both types of seat time exemption. And an example of that is if you had a student who moved in with an incomplete educational record, but that student may take a placement test and be ready to go into Algebra 2. But depending on how old that student is and where we want them to be able to move for graduation, if we just place them in Algebra 2, that student may not be able to get those 4 math credits that they need for graduation and or for college entrance. For example, if they need to be able to see a certain number of credits of a subject area on their transcript. And so being able to include those things on a student's transcript to make sure that it's a more robust picture of the actual learning experiences, again, is something that they would like to be able to do. And so if we are looking again at what Pickens is asking for, they are asking for that flexibility around seat time on that coursework, so especially again in virtual and hybrid, and some flexible scheduling. One of the things that they are also asking for in Pickens is, this is around certification, but it's different than anything we've heard before. So in Pickens, what they are asking for is out-of-state certified applicants who come from a state where they have, or a district where they have Cognia accreditation, for example. So these are teachers who have certification, just not here in South Carolina, and they're in an accredited district, state, for example, that those folks be able to transfer and have their South Carolina certification waived without having to take any additional assessments, scores, et cetera. And we do have reciprocity with certain states. We don't have them with all states. And that is why they are asking for that. They are not asking to waive, and they're very clear about this in their application, they're not asking for initial certificate process or advancing to professional for that to change. So if that person did want to move to a professional certificate, they would need to do the additional testing, the additional assessments, and go through that, just not for that initial transfer in. An example that they give is, again, Pickens is close to Clemson. So American Sign Language is, if they have, for example, someone who's from another state that South Carolina does not have reciprocity from a place where they have been teaching American Sign Language in a Cognia accredited situation, but they would not be able to employ that teacher for their American Sign Language course because he or she does not have South Carolina certification, if that makes sense. So they're asking to be able to say, we'd like to be able to use that person. And again, if they want to move to that full professional certificate, that would happen over time, but it would allow them to begin that process with someone from another state rather than having to wait on that process to happen. But again, only if it is from an accredited background or situation. So that was their example of that. They are also asking, you will notice, around flexibility in student-to-teacher ratios, teacher load, maximum class loads, and class preparations. And the explanation around this, while on its surface sounds like, oh, that's a little different than what we've heard. What they are doing, again, going to some of the virtual programs that they are using, what they are realizing is, for example, flexibility to exceed maximum course loads might be if they are using these virtual platforms. So for example, they have a franchise courses through Virtual SC. And so if you have a teacher in the classroom who is certified, but you have students who want to also take some additional types of courses, but maybe you don't have enough for an entire course to make in your school. So in your high school, you don't have 15 kids who want to take that course. You have 2 that want to take that course, and so they're going to access that through Virtual SC. And you have 5 who want to take this other course in the sequence. That you could put all of those kids into one classroom. You have that certified teacher. The kids are actually taking the courses through Virtual SC, which means the teacher in the classroom is not having to do and have the burden of all of the planning and all of the assessing for multiple courses happening concurrently. But what he or she is able to do is pull those students regularly, make sure that they are keeping up in those classes, provide real-time tutoring and real-time additional help and assistance with them so that they're able to expand the types of offerings that kids can take rather than saying, sorry, we don't have enough students for this class to make. In limited situations, they want to pilot doing that. I will tell you, they have, and they note this in here, they have a group, a stakeholder group in Pickens that will look at every one of those situations before they happen. And that includes teachers, parents, community members, district folks. So that will not be something that just happens regularly. It would be in very specific and limited cases as they begin to see how that works. And again, they're not going to be doing that. They're not asking a teacher to teach and plan multiple courses completely, only when there is a virtual or a hybrid type course that students are enrolled in as well, if that makes sense. So that is
Could I
that piece.
ask a question about that? The teacher that's monitoring those students, what type certification is she going to have?
Yes, fully certified in that area. So
that area,
yes, and
okay.
so for example, I'll use I'll use French for example. I was a French teacher, so let's say that you do not have enough students enrolling in first semester for French 3. You're a smaller school, right? You only have 6 students wanting to take French 3, and you have 10 students wanting to take French 2. As a certified French teacher, if our students were enrolled in the Virtual SC French courses, I could literally be pulling and working with my French 2 students while my French 3 students are working in their courses, and vice versa. I could be doing that with my French 3 students. I wouldn't be the only person doing all the assessing and the planning and whatnot, but I could, as a certified teacher, in those courses, be able to do that in a way that makes sense. And so, again, I think Pickens has been very clear that they do not plan to do that across the board for all courses. It will be in really limited situations where things like that might occur.
Thank you for your question. And I think they even referenced they'll even have maximum loads they'll allow them to go to anyway.
They did, yeah. It will not be a unlimited cap, for sure. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention to you, they also talked about summer reading camp. They would like to begin summer reading camp as an after-school program immediately once students are identified by the interim assessment, rather than waiting until the summer to begin that program. So they are not asking for less time, less hours. They will still continue it in the summer. They just want to begin it before summer starts, so that it's a transition from an after-school program into a summer program.
All right. Are there any questions for Ms. DeStacio? Ms.
Madam
Ryerson?
Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Concerning the out-of-state certified teachers, is there a time limit on their out-of-state certification? How long? 1 semester, 2 semester, end of the year, next year? I'm curious because I was an out-of-state
Yeah.
teacher many years ago.
Yes, so I may not have all of the, all of the details for you, but I do know as this came through, we worked with the Office of Teacher Certification. We had them review this request as well. We actually made some, they worked with Pickens and with that committee to answer those types of questions. They will accept, what will happen is they would accept that certification, and once it goes through that, whatever the current process is, and I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head, that it would follow that process. But again, the one thing I do know is it will not be, it's not a, there is an end date on that. And for it to move to that professional certificate level, they would have to do those assessments and the additional full moving to that. So it really is intended to be a temporary thing to be able to get a teacher in the door and get him or her employed if they already have that certification. And I think the thing that is most important is to say, and they're not going to do this, it's not even a blanket thing. It will have to be certification and from an accredited institution as well, so that will begin that process. And that would only be the beginning of the process, not the end of the process.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other
Yes,
questions?
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
O'Shields?
if you don't mind. Item 2, as you mentioned, the one that Ms. Ryerson had mentioned, is there some way that sometimes good ideas come up from these things. And this is something that I agree from states that we do not have reciprocity with. Is this something that might be starred and taken by the department, possibly the Office of Certification, to see if this is something that could be more wholesale rather than as an exemption, something that may be something available, because we're all in a teacher shortage.
Yeah.
And if and as people move, it may be something that taking this very wise bullet, I think it's very, very smart, actually, and possibly expanding it so that other districts don't have to go through the process of requesting the exemption. And I know I'm rambling, but do you get my point?
I do. And I will just tell you, I think, actually, Mr. Tyler and I were talking before the meeting, this is a great example of when we get a proviso, it gives us an opportunity to engage with districts. It gives us an opportunity to pilot in some way, and to learn from them and them learn from us. This has spurred conversations with the Office of Teacher Certification. And it's a great example. We also have Dr. Yurda with us in my office. One of the things she is doing through this entire process is, because it is a proviso, we are keeping very good records of what is being requested, how often it's being requested, by how many districts. We'll be reporting that to the General Assembly as well as to the State Board. And yes, to sort of wrap that up, what we envision is if we see repeated requests for things, that should prompt conversation for us to talk about, is there a need at some point to reconsider a regulation or to make a change at the state level? But we don't want to do that without the information, without the data, and without having learned something from these districts who are going first, so that we have a really good model to say, this is what we need, this is why we need it, and this is how it can be done.
And Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, in looking at it, I think the thing you did that made it very clear is you're not seeking initial certification. These are people with what we would call continuing contracts coming into an area that we would just sort of say, we don't have an agreement with them, but it doesn't mean we can't establish an understanding that they're coming from a duly accredited institution with a rigorous program of study. So I appreciate the delineation with initial certification and it then being for those more seamlessly, because South Carolina can sometimes be very obstinate and very obstructionist in its efforts to allow for certification from other states that we deem less worthy. And I don't always view that as an understanding that goes through my little troglodyte head.
I do think, I will say, Ms. Stapleton, I do think it's worth noting that the contingency piece around the accredited institution is really what is the guardrail on that, for sure.
Agree. And thank you for your questions and comments, because the first time I read it, that was the first thing I thought too. When can we do this for everybody? You know, that'll be great. And so I'm so glad those discussions have already happened as well. Are there any other questions? All right. Hearing no other questions, is there a motion to approve the request for Pickens County School District?
Yes, although a school in Pickens County beat our football team 2 years ago by nearly 200 points in the
200
playoffs.
points.
That's a slight exaggeration, but the emphasis was it was a blowout. We will,
Understood.
I will approve this recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. O'Shields, for that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Frierson. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Sarah Longshore, Director of Federal and State Accountability, and she's here today to present some waivers that have been approved through her office.
That's right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. The purpose of this report is to provide an update regarding the waivers that have been granted to districts by the South Carolina Department of Education. Pursuant to State Board of Education Regulation 43-261, the State Board of Education may waive any regulation that would impede the implementation of an approved district strategic or school renewal plan. So the state superintendent or her designee has the ability to waive regulatory requirements for similarly situated schools and districts. And the South Carolina Department of Education must then report to the State Board of Education all waivers that have been issued by the agency. So therefore, between January and April of this current school year, or of this year, rather, January through April 2023, the SCD has approved waivers for 5 districts, and this list has been provided to you as information. This concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone have a question for Dr. Longshore? Thank you very much. We appreciate that. During our full board meeting today, what we had on our agenda is item 1, the proposed amendments, first reading. We approved them, but we won't put them on consent agenda because Mr. Cease is going to come back and present that to the full board later today. But we would like to entertain a motion to place items 2 and 3 on the consent agenda. And those are both of the waivers that were presented by Ms. DeStacio. Do we have a motion to add those 2 items to the consent agenda?
Motion to add, please.
Thank you, Dr. O'Shields. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Any discussion? All in favor of adding those 2 items, 2 and 3, to our consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. That motion carries. Is there any other business to come before our committee today? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.